The Irrational Confidence Podcast. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. We're talking NFL football with a mixture of college football. Yep, it is that time of the year. We are doing our annual full first round mock draft. Fresh and I can't do this alone. We're joined by some special guests today, but I'm joined by my co-host, Fresh. Fresh, how you doing, buddy?
Haps doing great. We're almost about 2 weeks out of the NFL draft. Things are starting to ramp up. We've got a lot, trades to factor in, a lot of free agency moves, a certain quarterback who's may or may not be doing some recreational stuff and trying to decide where he wants to be. And hey, we got the draft on top of that to figure out where players are going to be. So that's really, really exciting and looking forward to selecting some players tonight.
And we're joined always, you get behind the scenes, but now this time he's in front of the camera, our producer, Drew, and the legal eagle himself, King. Gentlemen, it's like the third time we've done this, third or fourth mock draft it is. Well, glad to have you guys back.
Yeah, third or fourth. Great job. Welcome,
Thanks
guys.
for having us.
Yeah, good to be here.
Look! I do like the fact that King has completely upgraded his setting. If you watch him progress over the years,
it's getting better. It's a slow burn to get to where we need to be.
Yeah. So, as you guys know, in our first round mock draft, we have not exchanged picks at all. We don't know what the person's doing ahead of time. Each one of us is going to be operating like the GM, like we are on the clock. So we will have the person pick in front of us and then kind of adjust as we go, as we're acting out as one of these teams. So, again, Fresh, you have the Tennessee Titans this year. You are on the clock with the first overall pick. I think this is a foregone conclusion, but who you got the Tennessee Titans taking?
I mean, early on, there's a lot of debate of they're going to sign a quarterback, sign a free agent with Darnold, Rodgers, whatever. I think we've kind of got to the point where it's narrowed down, and I totally agree from the very beginning that Cam Ward is the pick here. He's the most, even though the quarterback class is less than prior years, in this case, need for the position, the Titans need a franchise quarterback. They failed with Vince Young. They failed with Mariota. They haven't really had a franchise quarterback really since Steve McNair back in the late 90s, early 2000s. They've missed on a lot of prior to this, but they've got to find a way to hit. And I think they go with Cam Ward here, and I would too, just to sort of keep that reset and try to find finally that franchise quarterback. And the team is young enough, and there's a lot of open-endeds where you can develop the quarterback along with the team. You're not actually a playoff contender yet. Now, it gives you 2 to 3 years to really build behind him and grow from there.
Fresh, where would you, if Cam Ward came out last year, and same thing, if
not
you
even
had
first round, not even first round, not even first round pick.
You don't think he's better than Bo Nix as a prospect?
Bo was able to get well over 40 starts. He actually was able to put stuff on tape at Oregon and at Auburn in much more prime situations, and he did it consistently. You can make some boneheaded errors here and there, but Cam Ward's done stuff. But Bo came in much more prepared, and it proof was in the pudding that he performed. Cam Ward would not have been on that same level. And there's a reason why Cam went to Miami instead of going to the draft, because he knew he needed an extra year.
Yeah, I kind of think that if you're able to kind of overlap the 2 year draft, I do think Cam is still a first round pick. I don't think he is the same as Jaden Daniels up near the top. But I would have him in the Bo Nix range. What Denver, I think, was picking around 12, 13. I would have him in the middle first round.
Who else would have taken a quarterback then? Like, you can't just jump him up there. There. Like, there was no one else that needed a quarterback. He would have been below Bo Nix. I think Sean Payton still would have gone Bo over King.
Well, again, I look at a team like the Steelers that need a young quarterback very, very badly.
Well, but last year they had Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. They wouldn't have drafted a quarterback.
Right. And that's why I'm saying overlay of the two. All right. We're going to Drew. Drew, you are on the clock with the Cleveland Browns at number 2.
Cleveland Browns are going to select Travis Hunter.
Ooh.
Cornerback, wide receiver.
All right. Going to have to explain yourself.
Well, we had previously recorded this mock draft prior to the Myles Garrett re-signing, and I went Abdul Carter, and I thought about just running that back, but just didn't seem right. I figured they fill that need. They're probably not going to go with another defensive end that high. So it was going to be quarterback or Hunter. And so I went Hunter just because I think that He's a dynamic athlete, and if he's able to replicate anything like what he's done in college at the pro level, he's worth the pick. And I mean, why not? I mean, I don't think the Browns should take a quarterback with their track record and the current situation. So
You
It
guys,
adds some flash. It provides some support for whoever that quarterback's going to be, but definitely I think builds the defense and helps give them some stability to at least thrive on that, especially in the AFC North.
yeah, and the guy plays two positions. Hopefully he can play them well because they're both positions in need for the Browns. So it'll be interesting.
would you be drafting him to kind of continue to do like full time, or are you going to lean one way or another? Like, we're going to let you play some defense and focus on offense, or some offense, focus on defense.
I want to, you got to get him in and kind of see and all that, but I would try to get as much out of him on both sides. Why not?
Fair enough. All right, New York Giants are on the clock. King, you got the pick.
All right, the Giants this year, staying true to my annual homerness to Michigan. I'm going to go with Will Johnson.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a little bit of an unusual pick, but I think that they need a quarterback, but I don't think a quarterback is going to be something they would waste a first round on because the quarterback pool is a little lacking. And I still think that Will Johnson is going to be a better player than he is even on the board as we speak. And he's pretty high up, all things considered, but he was injured for so long. If he can stay healthy and is on a team where he has some help, he will be dynamite. And they need a ton of help in the secondary. So it's a little bit of a bold pick, but I think it's a smart one as far as the talent available and what they need. That's where I would go.
Reach City.
Fair enough.
Well, so looking at the Giants from that perspective, why not take care of the offensive line? I totally agree not going to quarterback there. They also signed James Winston. I mean, he's just going to win, 2 games. Why avoid the offensive line? And even with the addition of a focus and renewal in that offensive coordinator, why avoid the offense altogether?
I think overall, as far as what's available, I think that they're going to be doing a lot of free agency, and they're going to be making some changes with what they have. But as far as a first-round pick, grabbing what kind of first-round talent's available, I think that you're going to get more bang for your buck out of Will Johnson as a wow factor in the secondary, which is something that can make an immediate change. And that's always kind of what I'm looking for in the first round, is someone who can come in and significantly increase wherever they're coming. I think you can get that elsewhere for the offense. I mean, not in a fantastic, like everything's going to be perfect way, but dollar for dollar, position for position, I think your maximum benefit is going to be to get somebody who is going to be able to hold down their position, bar none. And as long as he's healthy, I think Will Johnson can do that. So it is a gamble. I mean, I'll give you that. The safe play would probably be to do the offensive line, take one of the decade-long position players you can probably get there in the first round. But I also think that you can fill that hole later on in the draft or in other trades, free agencies, however you want to look at it. Whereas getting that kind of wow player in the secondary is going to be kind of limited. So it is a gamble, but I think it's probably worth snagging to fill that position in a way that will last. If, again, taking the gamble, he's healthy.
Right.
The gamble is healthy, but you're the new quarterback there in New York is Mr. Unlimited. But I think with Brad and Will Johnson, you're basically showing that he is limited. You need to build a good defense to keep them in contention.
So I'm on the clock with the New England Patriots. This is a tough one because, like you said, Drew, we recorded this and Abdul Carter is on the board for me. And I know, like, right now I am in between protecting Drake May, or I'm going to need to get after the opposing quarterback and take someone like Abdul Carter. New England gave up 52 sacks last year, 34 to Drake May. You have to protect your quarterback in the NFL. As much as I kind of would prefer to take Abdul Carter in this spot there, I think Will Campbell is exactly what King just said, where it is a decade-long starter on the left side of that offensive line. again, it's not a sexy pick. It's not something that you're going to sell mass quantities of jerseys for, but it's going to be something that makes your team substantially better to protect Drake May's blind side.
So wait,
No issue with that pick at all.
Who
Will
you taking?
Campbell.
Oh,
Will
two
Campbell,
Rex
so-
arms?
Yeah.
Okay.
I love that. All right, great thing you bring that up there, Drew. The guy dominates in college. Nobody cares about his arms, but then you go and like, oh, his arms are too short.
T-Rex arms.
I'm sorry, I watched film. The dude's blocking people left and right. His arms were short then. Why are they now apparently short now?
Right. And I just, again, he won me over with just the press conference that he gave where he's like, listen, if I give up one bad play a game, I'm not going to last long in the league. I love guys that have a mentality like that.
I think his mentality also fits with Mike Vrabel. Like,
Right.
they're football guys. They're no nonsense. They're just there to do the job and beat you up.
All right, Fresh, you're on the clock with the Jacksonville Jaguars at number 5.
Coach Cohen, Duval. In this case, you look what Liam Cohen did at Tampa Bay with Baker Mayfield. It was very explosive offense. Two big time receivers, plus he filled in some slot guys, ran 2 running backs, used the tight end a little bit here and there. I think we all were scratching our heads here in Jacksonville when Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk, not so much, but Evan Ingram being let go. And there's this deficiency in playmakers on this offensive side. With that, you already have Brian Thomas Jr., and you have a chance of landing another legit receiver across from him. Tetris, Tatera McMillan from Arizona, number 1 receiver in my opinion right now, even though there's a lot of competition from Emeka, Egbuka, and Matthew Golden for that number 1 spot. You got to get the 2 receivers there. They're both young to pair along with Trevor Lawrence in that contract and really build together. So I've got to go McMillan here in this situation and give them 2 weapons that Cohen can work. Now, Cohen can coach because the dude made Will Levis a productive quarterback in college. That shows where the guy knows the X's and O's, and I think he can get Trevor Lawrence with the receivers on the same page pretty quickly and let him operate.
I like this pick a lot.
Yeah, makes sense.
I like McMillan a lot. I think so many people are going to be like, who? And you're like, because no one watched Arizona football unless you're an Arizona fan. So
I think 2 years ago, maybe a little bit more attention, but we kind of, we're always prisoners of the moment. And it's been a year separated. But he'll burst on the scene and they'll be just fine.
All right, Drew, you're on the clock with the Las Vegas Raiders, and I got a feeling if you're the Raiders GM in this spot at 6, you got to be pretty stoked about what fell to you.
Yes, and despite there being some conversation within the draft room, we will not be taking Mason Graham. We are definitely moving forward with Abdul Carter.
Right. All right. Let me ask you this, because Abdul Carter has been like, if he legitimately falls to Las Vegas like this, is this even though like most people are saying, oh, he's going to be 2-3, is a 3 spot, is this falling in the draft for a guy like that's at his stature?
It might be by some people's standards. For me, it's not, just because the first couple teams really, I mean, the first 3 all need quarterback. I'm not saying they're going to go quarterback, but just saying that the Browns are one of the only teams I know that start trying to build with a defensive end.
Right.
I mean, usually that's like you get the pass rusher after you have the quarterback. And so I just think that that's why he's going to slip by the first 3 potentially. But I wouldn't be shocked if the Titans went with him with the first pick, honestly. Now, I think they're going to end up ultimately going quarterback. But if that were to happen, because I don't really like any of these quarterbacks, not that, they couldn't be successful, but I think, given last year's draft, I think there's at least 3, if not 4 guys from last year's draft that get drafted ahead of any of the guys in this year's draft. And so to take them first overall, I get you have the need, but I think the Titans would be better off taking Carter in the long run. And then, because the quarterback thing, you need a good one for sure, but there's a handful of good ones, and then there's a whole bunch that you can't really tell the difference between other than the names on the jersey. So you could get one of those guys and have a better defense and probably be okay on offense. So anyway,
Right. Good point. I don't disagree.
About that Abdul Carter thing, which I think could hurt him because the depth at edge rusher this year is pretty deep. And it's going to be pretty tough. What Abdul Carter do in his entire career was not completely like Micah Parsons or LeVar Arrington as compared to anybody else. So he is a very good player and athletic and can get off the edge and maybe get in some of the space. But there's not, the gap is not that big. And that actually might hurt him in drafts where it's like, do I really want to take him here? I can just, we can wait and get somebody else 3, 4, 5, 6 picks later. I think that could be an incoming factor, which I hope doesn't happen for him personally. But when you look at the overall field, bang for your buck, it might actually, punish him down the road. And not because of anything he's done at all. It's just there's a lot of, supply and demand situation.
All right. Well, we're at the New York Jets at number 7. Ryan, you are on the clock.
This is actually kind of a tough one, which is ironic because they need so much help in so many places. And I was honestly leaning towards, well, first let me say I wouldn't take a quarterback. I know they need one. I wouldn't take a quarterback in the first round based on kind of what I was talking about before with the Giants. I think that what you could get, I don't think Sanders would be a great pickup. With where we are, I was honestly leading towards trying to get McMillan as a wide receiver, but then again, the Jets need so much help on the defense up front as well. And so if Carter was available, I was going to snag him. If I was in the room making the call, I would probably go with Mason Graham. Not to Michigan back-to-back intentionally, but just with the fact that he's left.
I'm shocked by that pick.
No one would have guessed that one was coming.
Right.
But I mean, it isn't intentional at all. I mean, honestly, I was there. The other two were probably going to be my picks if they had made it. But I think that would probably be the smartest move for what the Jets could get in the first round, where again, it would be the most significant help from jump.
Well, first off, if you select another Michigan Wolverine in your next pick,
that won't happen.
I'm gonna start investigating that Connor Stallions has you on the payroll.
There's still one more with the first round grade.
There is. I mean, we could talk about tight ends here in a minute if you want to. I mean, I kind of considered that as well. But
your next pick, I think, would be a great situation if he was going that location.
And leave it to Michigan to have a Naval Academy genius working for them in the department in which he was. But that's a conversation for a different day. See generally Netflix.
Naval Academy genius.
Oh, man. All right. Well, I am back on the clock with the Carolina Panthers. I'm going to say something. I'm going to almost reiterate what King said in that if I'm the Panthers, I would be loving if McMillan fell to me there because they need help on the offensive side of the football. I agree with Fresh as well because there's so many great pass rushers here. But I really think that they got to start adding some weapons in their offense and not just, guys at the tail end of their career. I am going to take in this spot here with the Carolina Panthers, they're going to take Tyler Warren out of Penn State. And the reason I'm taking Tyler Warren is because of the Swiss Army knife factor, because he is able to split out. You're able to bring him in close to the line. You're able to motion him into the backfield even at times. I like the diversity of him. I think he's a good asset that they'd have in there. Again, McMillan's on the board. I'm probably taking him. Again, I like Mason Graham as well at that spot. But, again, they're both off the board, so I'm going Warren.
And I have no issues with that at all. I think that's going to be just giving Bryce Young as many weapons as possible to help him be successful.
Right.
That's a GM looking for a new job next year.
Well, obviously. Bryce Young's your quarterback. I don't think there's anyone you can pick.
He actually had a decent year last year. They fixed some stuff. I'm not saying he's fully elite, but they fixed something. He's actually productive. A lot more productive than the team that's picking after him in their quarterback situation.
All right, Fresh, you're back on the clock with the New Orleans Saints at number 9.
This is an epic disaster right now of the franchise. There's a lot of aging players on this roster, and there's not many young bright spots. Poor Chris Olave dealing with a lot of injuries and concussions in his career. He hasn't actually gotten going. Derek Carr, quarterback, is nothing to write home about. Alvin Kamara's he's been through the ringer in his career. He's kind of getting old. Offensive line has not been good. It's a kind of a franchise where we don't know what we're doing. They obviously bring in their new head coach, formerly of the Eagles, who is an offensive genius. Boise State, Dallas Cowboys, he has some, knowledge. How do you even want to support? Do you want to build the defense and try to overhaul all that side and get some younger players there? Or do you want to give your young boy genius offensive coordinator from the Eagles who learned under Nick Sirianni and Mike McCarthy some weapons to help you, Derek Carr? I wouldn't take a quarterback here. The only time if I was the Saints, I would trade down. You maybe get a quarterback later. But you need some playmakers. And that leads me to they need a speedster on this roster to help Chris Olave and get some separation. And Matthew Golden out of Texas at wide receiver would be my pick here. Now, I really, really love Emeka Egbuka, but I think him and Chris Olave are very similar, and you don't really get that dynamic of a 1-2 punch. Golden acts as more of a deep threat and would kind of give them a 1-2 separation to help offset some of those coverages. And that's my deciding factor in going Golden there is using that more straight line speed to help pair with Olave, giving Kamara some help, and maybe giving Derek Carr some practical weapons to actually use and be successful. But this franchise, they could go a myriad of different ways. And I'm not sure they could do wrong unless they took a quarterback at this pick and not dropping down later. So I'm taking Matthew Golden out of Texas in this election. But the Saints have a lot of question marks going forward.
Listen, I think it's a reach for Golden, but I also understand the desperate nature that is the New Orleans Saints too, though.
Yeah, if we can't trade, if the Saints are here, they should trade down and get as much help as you possibly can get. But we can't trade here, and offensive lineman's not going to really solve them right now because they took an offensive line the past couple of years. Defensively, the only other player I would take maybe Jahdae Barron at a corner and help them give some secondary support and make it for Lattimore. But they're going to have to score some points, and they're going to need to get their new head coach some weapons and Derek Carr some weapons to try to outscore people as opposed to trying to shut people down and defense bad.
How far would you want to drop down as the Saints? Like if you said like they should be one to like, are you talking about trading back into late teens? Or are you saying I think it would be better value in the 20?
I would maybe 9 to like 20 to 25. Could you pick maybe a third? You need to collect some assets, and as many picks as you probably can collect that are going to get you some more players. They need to overhaul the roster. Like it's an old roster, and if you're not going to do it through free agency, they obviously don't spend. Nobody wants to go play New Orleans. You're going to have to do it through the draft, and they struggle there. Granted, their real life, their GM Mickey Loomis has been there forever, and the team has really, really struggled. I think Sean Payton really ran that franchise by himself, and I think they're looking for as many potential players on their roster as possible. So if you could drop down to 20 to 23, maybe 14 spots, pick up a high third or in a sixth on top of that, a high third and a fifth, like accumulate picks. They're not winning the Super Bowl this year. They're probably not competing for the NFC South. So how can we build a full-on franchise with a new head coach going forward?
All right, Drew, the Chicago Bears and your beloved Caleb Williams is on the clock.
Well, the Chicago Bears would be very pleased if things play out like this. We're going to go ahead and move forward with Ashton Jeanty, running back. I was a little worried the Saints might grab him, so happy to get him, and the Bears fans will be thrilled.
Solid pick. Can't argue that at all.
God, I love Jeanty so much. Again, the only thing that I hate about Jeanty is that his quarterback's going to be Caleb Williams.
Fair.
Again,
fair.
Drew's the one who was early on it last year and pointed out how much hot garbage Caleb Williams is.
Hey, and I know we're early and maybe I've had the advantage of, more picks and stuff, but Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, and Ashton Jeanty, that's a pretty good draft. I'm smoking you fools.
Yeah.
And the collective record of those three teams will be
hey, we're just talking about whatever name value in the draft, baby. I'll tell you, Mel Kiper would be proud of my picks right now.
Right.
No.
He would hate your picks. Mel Kiper would hate your picks because they're actually logistical and logical, and they actually will be productive players in the NFL.
Right. Well, Drew, if the right people see this, man, didn't Todd McShay get to be a GM for a couple of years?
I'm open to offers, you know.
Exactly.
I'll be your agent.
There you go. Perfect. Keep it all in house.
Let's go.
All right, King, you're back on the clock with the San Francisco 49ers.
Well, I want to talk about tight ends. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Actually, you could have gone 10 there and just really string it along.
I could have made the whole thing happen, but no, that's not where I'm going. I think that we're going to be going with Josh Simmons, also still from the Big Ten. A little bit of a different slant. I think that he's underrated. I know he was, the injury that he had kind of set him back a little bit, but I think he would be a great get. And again, trying to get the most out of each selection with what's left on the board, I think that would be a good fill for what's needed. And I can't debate myself out of that being the wisest choice with what's left.
Offensive line's a big need for the 49ers. I have no issue with that at all. That's a solid pick. You could have picked any of those top 5 talents left, and I think that would have been a good solid pick.
You're getting one false start a game, minimum.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
You'll get at least one false start a game, maybe one holding penalty a game. Again, it's like clockwork.
It's still better than the Chiefs right now in their current offensive line situation. So you're winning.
Hook them to a taser in practice, zap them a couple times, you get them nice and trained. It'll be fine. I'm sure there's no rules against that.
Invisible fence.
It'll be fine.
Right. All right, I am on the clock with the Dallas Cowboys here. Yeah, you got it again.
Tell me how you really feel.
Yeah. I kind of just want for giggles to say that Dallas Cowboys take Shedeur Sanders just because it plays out to everything anyone wants. But I'm going to actually try to think like what Dallas actually should do and what they actually need.
You were right ahead of time. What they really are going to do is take Shedeur Sanders.
Oh,
Jerry Jones is going to flash. He wants to flash.
Right. I'm going to say of what a rational person should do on a podcast called Irrational Confidence, but I am going to go Siobhan Ravel from East Carolina as the cornerback there. I think they need cornerback help big time out that way. I like Ravel a lot. The more I looked into him and the more, as I dug deeper into where he was with all of his stuff. The thing I like about him is that he's 6'3". He's 6'3", and he's got some size to him that he can match up with big wide receivers in the NFL. That's why I really want to see him in I would say I want to see him in Dallas.
Yeah. You had to dig deep into the rankings to find him, huh?
He's rebelled in that review.
Yeah. Well, Will Johnson is off the board, and again, I want a corner, not a safety here in this spot here, and they definitely need help in the secondary.
So you think long-term Revel will be better than Barron as a pro?
Yeah, I do because of the 6'3"-ness. I think, again, with as the bigger, the faster these wide receivers are getting, it's harder to be a Barron is listed at 5'11". I think it's going to be much more difficult for a 5'11" corner to continue to be productive in the NFL as we continue to see these guys come in.
This coming from the guy that took T-Rex arms.
But in a game where you no longer have a true perimeter receiver and things are so wide open, you need guys who can play inside and outside.
Yeah.
And who was Rebel faced in, I think you're going to get the questions, who was Rebel faced when he was in college? Because he didn't play senior year at ECU. Who was he actually matched up against? Where's that game film of him actually going against elite or more high-tier receivers? That's going to be the one thing that's going to hang over him. I think he's very talented, and the 6'3" is definitely going to help him. But in game film, who was he faced on a repetitive balance? Because he didn't go to the Senior Bowl. He didn't go to the Combine because he's been hurt. So you're hoping and praying.
I am. Oh,
Yeah,
definitely.
Just so you know, no matter who you took, I was going to crap on you because it's the Cowboys. So
Right. I figured this much.
Lose.
I was
that
going
was
to
a reach. You made it easy, but
I was going to crap on my pick regardless because it's the Cowboys. But let's go on to the Miami Dolphins here. You're on the clock, Fresh.
This is another team that, I mean, as of this afternoon, they might need a receiver. Since, another one had another incident with certain law enforcement officers decided to show up to his house. But with their offensive line being kind of iffy, their secondary kind of being iffy, then having issues at safety, there's a lot of different ways the Dolphins could go. They've kind of choked. I think they've even maxed out under their current regime where they're at, where they're a wild card team and that's it. What's going to put them over the top? And I think coming back to it, the offensive line needs some serious help. If they're going to be a run first team, they're going to need to protect Tua. They're going to need to find a tackle, or in this case, Armand Membo. He can play tackle, can play guard. They can put him wherever they need him and sort of find a spot to help that team. They are a run first football team and built off of play action. They need the offensive line to be solid. In this situation, he's going to be able to provide that instant impact to the Dolphins and maybe help become a road grader to get that running game going when it matters, not in September when they're putting up 70 points on the Denver Broncos, but really in December and January in playoff time when they need somebody who can actually get in the trenches and drive somebody off the line of scrimmage. So with this pick, Armand Membo of Missouri will be the Dolphins selection at 13 overall.
Nice pick.
Yeah. All right. We'll go to the Indianapolis Colts. Drew, you're on the clock right now. And I know if you had the Colts in 26, you're taking a quarterback because the Anthony Richardson project would be over by then. As a card-carrying member of I hate Anthony Richardson as a legit NFL prospect member, who you got for the Colts?
Well, Colts are having an internal debate in the draft room right now. We're going on the defensive side of the ball because that's where all the talent lies that's left here. With an offense that's going to struggle regardless, we might as well try to stop the opposing team. And, edge rushers are typically more valuable, but we're going to go ahead and grab Malachi Starks before Fresh can get him.
Whoa.
Big safety, dog up the board and help solidify that secondary.
Why in the world are you going safety over some of the edge rushers that are still there?
Well, I said there was internal debate happening, and that was between Starks and Green. And ultimately, we're trying to recreate the Bob Sanders effect.
Or just get fired by week 8?
Well, you kind of got to look last year. They went Ellis from UCLA in the first round.
You're talking about an organization that's rolling back AR-15. You really think that they're going to be firing me that quick?
No, I think they're cleaning house regardless by week 8. I think
it's a free-for-all.
I think everyone's gone.
Burn the house down.
Yeah,
I mean, you're probably not wrong, but
when Pat McAfee called him out and didn't renew the season tickets, I think that was the death wish.
Also,
the current administration of the GM and head coach.
You just got done taking the day 2 guy in the top 12.
The difference is I actually really like Rebel.
What do you got against Starks?
He likes Starks.
Yeah, Starks isn't bad. I like the kid from South Carolina a touch more, but I like Xavier Watt a lot too. I think you could have probably got one of those guys in the second, maybe.
That's in his anti-Georgia agenda.
I know.
Talking to Adam again.
Hey,
talking to Adam again.
How many Bulldogs were on the Eagles? Yeah, give me Starks.
All right. Ryan, you are on the clock with the Atlanta Falcons.
The tension is palpable.
Don't take a dog. Just be true to form here as the Falcons. Do not take a player from Georgia.
I actually am absolutely going to be taking a player from Georgia. I'm going to be taking.
shock the system.
Yeah, well, that's I like to be a little bit of an agent of chaos when possible. Might as well just throw some fuel on the fire. But I'm going to be taking Jalen Walker. I think they need a lot of help on defense. Still on the board, great get. Could use some help at linebacker too, but with where we are, that's a no-brainer. And I can break the mold and change things up a little bit. So that's where I'd go.
If you did that, there would be a celebration unknown to man for all Falcons fans.
It would go from Atlanta to Athens. It would be amazing.
Walker being there, you mentioned linebacker help. He can play off ball. He can be an edge rusher. Can play middle of the field. Like, he gives him that flexibility. And if he's at 15, you might have teams trying to trade up to go grab him. I think he's a top 10 pick.
Yeah.
I'm a little biased, but I think it'll be a top 10 pick in reality.
I think so too. Yeah.
And that flexibility in the NFL nowadays, when you have so many dime and nickel packages, putting a linebacker who can play anywhere is a secret weapon. Really helps out defense.
Right. I was hoping so I'm on the clock next with the Arizona Cardinals. I was actually hoping that Walker dropped to me there because exactly what you were talking about there, Fresh, is Arizona needs help at the DM position and the linebacker position, and Walker's versatility was the reason why I was hoping that he drops to me with the Arizona Cardinals. So since he's off the board, I'm going James Pierce from Tennessee as my second pick, is my secondary option here. Basically because what I love about Pierce is that he's the fastest of all of these edge rushers here. You take a look, he's got that 4.47 40 time, I think, or 4.48, sub 4.5. And dude's fast. He's got what I noticed. I've been watching some of his tape, and again, I don't know if it's just how it was viewed there, but he does look leaner than the other pass rushers. His frame just looks leaner.
You could see him playing at Tennessee. He's basically a sprinter. On the field. He was a sprinter on the field, and he would just get after the quarterback, and that's why they ended up double teaming, triple teaming towards senior year, because no one else could really get there, and he was the only guy. And he still got home and made some plays. So in his 40 time at the combine, it was blazing speed.
Right.
Yes, he got in the open field, he's chasing somebody down, he's going to get home.
Right. Do you think he has the potential to be like a Micah Parsons, where Micah Parsons was kind of in college? But, they did have him play back a little bit, but he was like an edge rusher. Do you see them maybe moving Pierce off ball?
I think they'll move him all around because you're going to speed. I could see if they have they call a NASCAR package. You could be able to put him out and stand up. You're going to put his hand on the ground. Maybe even put him at one of the weak side tackle spots. You can move him around and control and use the speed and athleticism, because a guard trying to match up with that speed, especially in a large passing situation, nickel dime, 4 or 5 receivers in the field, that's now a matchup problem because you're putting that guard in space and he's going to be on skates. So I think using the weapon, you talk about versatility above with Jalen Walker, the same thing comes in here now with our edge rushers across the board. I can move some guys inside, outside, depending on the situation. You create matchup problems in a pass rush with the offensive line or quarterback to worry about.
Right. All right, Fresh, you're on the clock with the Cincinnati Bengals.
Well, very similar topic. We're talking about pass rushers and versatile and athletes.
Right.
With Hubbard retiring and the Hendrickson situation still unknown, and him asking for a lot of money, and the Bengals paying 2 receivers, rightfully so, a lot of money. You need to find a pass rusher. That Bengals defense is a sieve. And with that, Michael Williams is being taken by the Bengals here. They need some pass rush. You put him across from Henderson. You let that contract kind of play out. You have somebody who can build behind and rotate in. Him with Myles Murphy already there, you start adding and reviving that defensive line and that front pass rush for the Bengals. And Al Golden, the new defensive coordinator there, come from Notre Dame. You're going to see a lot of unique pass rushers coming in that perspective. Michael gives them another weapon on the edge.
I don't hate it on that part as well. I would ask you, did you consider Stewart at all with the ability, because Stewart's got that bigger frame, that you could kind of move him in, where Williams is definitely going to be on the outside, where Shamar Stewart, you may be able to move him inside some.
Well, that's why I factored in the Myles Murphy pick out of Clemson last year in the first round, where he's more of a beefer. He could move him in tackle. And with Hendrickson being a bigger guy too, now you can kind of balance. But look, Stewart is, I see Stewart as a solid edge rusher from a 3-4 perspective that you can slide in or stand up, but more of a beefer guy on the line, not a speedster on the outside.
Yeah. All right, Drew. Seattle Seahawks are on the clock. Big trade. Seahawks. Are you going wide receiver to replace?
No, sir. The Seattle Seahawks are very pleased to be selecting Mike Green.
All right. We are Marshall.
Don't really have much to say beyond it, other than just the fact that I don't think he'll be there, and I think they would be very happy if he was.
I honestly could see him dropping if people can't get past the Marshall thing. If people can't, earlier, you talked about the Cowboys pick and reaching for Revel there, and he hasn't played a bunch being at ECU. Marshall didn't play a bunch of people as well. You say, oh, well, they play against lesser talent. I mean, dude was a monster at Marshall. I'm not hating on Mike Green at all. I think he actually is an amazing pass rusher. But I would just wonder if GMs are going to have a hard time getting past the Marshall factor.
And if I'm a GM, I'm kind of the same way of, if I'm putting my first-round pick, I want to see a guy who consistently, week over week, I play against much more tough competition as opposed to the Sun Belt or Conference USA. You might get, Mike Green Marshall plays in Ohio State or Michigan or USC one game, and they're going to give all for that one game. Are they giving it, and they get the same competition every single week? We've seen some small school guys in the first round be successful. For the most part, it's a little overwhelming because of the pressure of being a first round pick. Can you live up to that billing? Trey Lance didn't live up to it. That's one example, but it's a lot to put on a guy who hasn't gone against the elite week in and week out. Are they truly ready? Some can perform, but that's a big risk with the first round pick.
All right, Ryan, you are back on the clock with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
All right, and for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, we're going to be staying with the defense, and I've been going back and forth a little bit between linebacker and edge. I think they need help kind of everywhere. Mm-hmm. And I'm actually going to go with Stewart. For some of the reasons you were just talking about, but while you guys were talking, I was double checking, and he has, let's see here, a 4.59 40-yard dash, a 40-inch vertical, the second best amongst all the defensive line in the 2025 combine. And he is huge. He's 6'6", 6'7", looks like.
Large American.
So he's got the size and the speed. That would be a great pickup, and I think that would be a little bit smarter, better, faster, jump higher than the other positions needed. So still on the board, I would take him.
Just want to pause you and let us sort of revel in the fact. You just listed off a guy who could be a hand in the dirt defensive end. Mm-hmm. And we talked about James Pearson, his 40-yard dash. When we were younger, when we were kids, those guys would have been wide receivers, linebackers, corners, running backs. They're playing defensive line.
That's crazy.
Right. They are these athletes are enormous human beings, and they're getting bigger and faster. And it is, I'm not shocked by anything anymore. You see 40 times at the combine, you're like, whatever. He's just lightning fast. It's amazing. And then you factor the offensive line. I got to block this guy now. There's some elite players out there, and they're only getting better.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of Stewart there as well. I think especially you take a look at our last couple picks there. I really think if you're a GM and you kind of moved those around, you'd be pretty happy with the guy you walk away with.
I could see 11, maybe 12 edge rushers going in the first round just because there's just so many you want to grab at least one, and you can't have enough. We saw in the Super Bowl, you can't have enough down linemen getting after the quarterback.
Right. All right, I am on the clock with the Denver Broncos, and I go a little bit off here as well.
Irrational? You're gonna be irrational?
Yeah. Oh, I'm gonna be irrational on this one.
Taking a punt.
Be confident.
I'm sitting there saying this. If I'm the Denver Broncos, I think a lot of Denver Bronco fans, they're going to be screaming for Egbuka or Luther Burden the third. As you guys know, big Ohio State fan, would love to take Egbuka here, not taking Egbuka here. I don't take Missouri players because they're frauds, and the entire team of the 2024 Missouri Tigers are frauds. So I don't think that highly of Luther Burden. But
are they the WWE of NFL of college football?
No, because those guys are actual athletes. These guys are just frauds. All right, but what I am doing, the Denver Broncos are going to take running back Amarion Hampton from North Carolina, and I have fallen in love with him as a player. He is 6 foot. He is he's 6 foot running back. He's just as fast as Genty there. I think it's like a couple hundredths of a second difference here. And the fact is that he's a bigger build. He's able to kind of really get downhill. They need to give Bo Nix weapons. And the first one that I think is that while Burden, jokes aside with Burden, but Egbuka and Burden are very specific style receivers that you need. I think that it would be better to focus on the running game as well there in Denver. I like Amarion Hampton. I think he is going to be one of the best running backs in the NFL for the next 8 years.
I mean, we all know Sean Payton loves to run the football. And you're trying to get in that offense spread where now you have Bo Nix back there, you have him. It's just weapons. You have a couple of rotations of younger backs to sort of fill in, but Amarion Hampton and him would be a nice little 1-2 punch in the backfield. I think that'd be a solid little slide, a plug and play from day one.
Nice pick.
Drew, you watch the most of Hampton, probably out of all of us. What is your take on him?
I think he'll be pretty solid. He's good catching the ball. He's good runner, but I mean, I know running back position has kind of gone back and forth on overvalued, undervalued, and he's solid, but I would, I don't know that he's a first round pick in my opinion, but I like the guy. I mean, he is probably the second best running back, but I just think that Genty is not head and shoulders above, but at least a little bit above him.
Yeah. Well, I think you said where his ability to catch the football, and especially with what we've seen from Peyton with what he used with Kamara, that's why I went with him. So, all right, Fresh. Pittsburgh Steelers are on the clock, and the Sanders slide is very real right now.
Well, you hate Anthony Richardson. Drew does not like Caleb, and I can't stand Shedeur. But yes, at the Steelers pick, they right now currently Mason Rudolph, I believe, is the starting quarterback. Aaron Rodgers is again on a self-reflection tour at the moment to figure out if he wants to play in Minnesota and complete the trilogy behind Brett Favre or go play for Mike Tomlin. At 21, I think even if the Steelers are built different, Mike Tomlin might want to lead Shedeur, but I don't see them doing this at that point. If they want to take a quarterback early, they trade down. I think they have bigger issues across that entire franchise and that team. As we saw last year in the playoffs, we saw last year late. The quarterback, Russell Wilson actually didn't play that bad. Him and Justin Fields were manageable. That defense had issues. The offense, receiver-wise, I think they kind of fixed. But in this case, you look at what the Bengals have, what the Bills have, what the Chiefs have, other teams, the Dolphins, other teams in the AFC, they need to find ways to play defense again like the Steelers of the past. And we didn't really see that down the stretch last year. Jahdae Barron's sitting here at corner. He can slide in the slot. He can match up against slot receivers. You can potentially put him outside. He fits that mentality of building that Steelers defense, those terrible towels. That's who they are. That's who they're going to be. They can win. As we've seen, they've won games with Mason Rudolph in the past. The defense can become rock solid. They had a little leaky last year. Drafting Barron here helps solidify that secondary and gives them another player they can rely back there.
I agree. I can't really say anything opposite of that.
I will, just for the record, I think if they took Shedeur Sanders here, I think Mike Tomlin is probably the only coach in the NFL that can deal with that ego.
Right.
I mean, what he's done with A.J. Brown and Le'Veon Bell and Ben Roethlisberger, the list is on. Like, the dude can handle it.
Right.
But I think it's also, I think all those years of that stress wore on him. You could definitely see he was a little tired last year. He needs he wants the guys to go out and play. I don't think he wants another circus around him.
All right, Drew. Chargers are on the clock. But Jim Harbaugh taking.
Well,
drink your milk and think about it.
Happy thoughts.
Honestly, with you saying that, it actually did sway my pick. I was between two guys, Kenneth Grant and Egbuka, and I think just due to his Michigan ties, the Chargers will be going with Kenneth Grant.
I mean, good defensive tackle, something that they could need. Definitely a guy that could step in, and Harbaugh has a background with him.
Ultimately, I was going to go Egbuka, but after you reminded me that would be Harbaugh in this pick, I don't think he would take an Ohio State receiver.
I don't think he would either.
So let's just keep it real. He'll take the Michigan guy. That's a position of need for them, so I think they'd be happy with that.
I think he would just probably say, like, that guy who wore that jersey that played at that school. That's the way if he had to select an Ohio State player, that's how that card would go down.
All right.
Probably. Yeah, I'd say that's probably about right.
Ryan, you are the Green Bay Packers. You are on the clock.
All right. Well, the Green Bay
Crowd's
Packers.
going crazy. Draft is in Lambeau. Crowd's going nuts. You got to get them fired up here.
Yeah. Woo. I think I would probably go with Egbuka at this point.
Right.
Needing the wide receiver, still on the board. I think it's kind of a no-brainer. It's a good pick. It would be a good asset for them to get going.
Yeah.
You know if that actually happens, how that would be the first Packers wide receiver taken in the first round with Javon Walker.
Really?
People would lose that almost 20 years. People would lose their minds. Like, you know the meme that the UFC meme when the guy breaks his leg and they also freak out. And that's exactly what would happen right there if that pick happened. People would lose their dang minds.
I think that Aaron Rodgers would would explode. Whoever retreat he's on, he just loses his mind.
That actually might trigger him. Like, I'm just so mad. I'm gonna call Kevin O'Connell and sign with the Vikings just out of spite because he's so angry and pissed off.
He could do some more ayahuasca. It'd be fine.
That would trigger some sort of event. Yes.
Right. All right. Well, speaking of the Vikings, I am on the clock with the Minnesota Vikings. Man, I'm struggling here because, again, I think they need help on the defensive line. They need help on the interior of their offensive line. I'm between Tyler Booker and Walter Nolan. I'm going to probably lean Walter Nolan just here because I think that he can be again, if he's motivated, the biggest knock on him is that he I don't know if he plays his potential every single play. That's the knock on him. But when he does play to his potential, he is maybe the best defensive line prospect in this draft. But again, does he love football or does he love the things football brings?
That's a great way to put it. I mean,
That's a good way to put
it. There are dollar signs. We saw a lot of that. He's one of those kids who was in that major Texas A&M recruiting class. They all got paid a lot. And not many of them were actually sticking around. Like, we have, Stewart and Turner, but the rest of those guys all jettisoned off to somewhere else. It's a motivation factor. Like, what will keep you going?
Right. And again, I can't refresh me here fresh because you may have seen this or any of you guys refresh me. I can think of a couple of plays where he was a wrecker at Ole Miss, but I don't think that there was a ton of them.
He had a couple of game-wrecking plays, but I think Ivy and Princely and Chris Paul Jr., the linebacker, I think he was taking on the double teams and they were thriving.
Yeah.
The NFL, you're not going to have that, so he might be more individual one-on-ones he's going to get because he was the nose tackle in that defense for the most part. And yeah, J.J. Pegues would come in as well, but he was the focus point. We got to stop Nolan, and then everyone else would thrive. So he made everyone else around him better.
Right.
But for your point, if you're going to be an elite player, I want to see you beating those double teams, beating that one-on-one battle. So here now, if he gets drafted with the Vikings, is he going to take advantage of those one-on-ones and be able to dominate?
Yeah. All right, Fresh, you're back on the clock with the Houston Texans.
Well, the last time we saw the Texans, Drew and I were together watching them get whooped in the playoffs. We were in Vegas. They dominated. Excuse me. They dominated and they whooped the Chargers. And their defense was great. And then the playoffs ended and they jettisoned off half their offensive line. It kind of had us all scratching our heads like, all right, you got no tackle, no guard. Who's going to block for CJ Stroud? And that makes this pick pretty dang easy, especially with Kelvin Banks Jr. sitting here on the board. You try to help rebuild that offensive line, protect your quarterback. Because CJ Stroud looked out of sorts last year. I think we all can agree. His freshman year, he was slinging it. Last year, offensive line struggled, had no real running game, and they couldn't protect him. And I think probably the reason why they got rid of everybody is just start fresh. And Kelvin Banks Jr. is my pick here to help rebuild that offensive line for the Texans and control their destiny in the AFC South.
Yeah.
Nice pick.
Yeah, you got to protect him. You got to protect Stroud. All right, Drew, your Los Angeles Rams. You're on the clock.
Well, I was going Kelvin Banks Jr. until that pick, which makes me think, well, is Gray's able to pick? But I think with Campbell still on the board, we're going to go ahead and take Campbell. He's the next Los Angeles Ram.
Jaheed Campbell, linebacker?
Yes, sir.
Why are you going linebacker in that spot?
Well, you questioning my GM ability?
Well, here's my...
You've been challenged.
Well, I'm just thinking this through, too, though.
I just didn't know if you had more context, that was all.
Well, again, linebacker, I can get the debate between, an offensive guard versus a linebacker, too. But their quarterback is Matthew Stafford. And, again, I look at this as the last beacon of hope for Shedeur Sanders. If the Rams do not, if he falls all the way to here, and the Rams don't take him at 26, he's not in the first round unless someone trades back into the first round to get him.
Yeah, I think someone's going to trade back in. I don't think the Rams they're not going to sell the farm for Shedeur. I don't think Sean McVay wants to deal with that. He wants control of his quarterback. He doesn't want to have a kid who's been told he's fantastic his entire life, who never had to compete for a starting job, to come in and learn like that. Again, there's going to be a culture clash with whoever gets Shedeur. He's been told he's been fantastic. He's never had to compete. You're going to have the right setting for that.
We didn't bring Stafford back to draft Shedeur.
Well, let me ask you this, though. Again, that's a good point you made with the whole thing. Do you think a guy that, how many of the coaches in the NFL would have the level of pull? And I think Sean Payton would be one of the few coaches that could handle Sanders in that situation.
So actually, this is a pretty good question. Where would he be the best fit?
Right.
I think the New York Giants would be a great fit. Brian Daboll can coach. And it's New York. Now, Shedeur has had the spotlight on him his entire life. He has dealt with the glitz and glamour. Him going to New York City is not going to be an awestruck moment. So the Jets or the Giants, I think the Giants have a much better offensive staff that would be able to develop him and work with him. But all right, I don't have to worry about the glitz and glamour of the media. I have an offensive-minded coach who can put me in a spot where I can be successful, who already coached Josh Allen, who got him sort of built up, who's been at Alabama, worked with those quarterbacks down there. He has that relationship. Kevin O'Connell, the Vikings aren't taking Shedeur.
Right. That's why I said this is the last beacon of hope past Pittsburgh and the Rams, and then no one's taking him unless someone trades.
He's not going to Baltimore. Too much money in Lamar.
Right.
Cleveland would be the only other spot they're trying to get rid of completely. Get rid of Watson. and you kind of look at how that situation is going to go down. He's not going to Denver. Seattle just signed Sam Darnold. He's not going to Arizona unless they want to dump Kyle Murray. He's not going to Dallas. He's not going to Houston. All these teams have young quarterbacks. The Saints would be the only other option. Who really, I think Derek Carr is the only other team is not, but are they at that point where, if they bring in Shedeur, he'd be able to get that team within 2 years to be competitive, but I think there's such a mess that it would be more frustrating for him because the team would not be very good. Right. And how are they going to operate? And I can see his frustrations and drama building because it's not like going to Colorado year one where you're playing your first year, you're 3-9, you're kind of whatever. Like they were solid. They could move the ball last year. It's going to be a challenge. And it'll be the first time in the past 4 years he hasn't played with Travis Hunter. Another big shock. Like I don't have a go-to guy on third down. So Shedeur needs to be put in a situation where he has Malik Neighbors and Brian Daboll, I think, would be the best fit for him and help him really grow.
Right. All right, King, you are back on the clock. The Baltimore Ravens.
Ravens are going to go with Gray Zabel. They need some help from North Dakota State, and he's going to come in, fill up some of that line. He's 6'6", 312 pounds. Solid pick. Fill the hole, literally.
I think he'd be a great spot at the guard, but then he could be a swing tackle emergency. But I think him being a guard would be helpful. Just because the thing we're talking about, not having elite pass rushers against him when he was at North Dakota State, I wonder if he was on the edge, how he'd be able to help protect. But putting that guard that size, he could be a road grader to help for Lamar and Derrick Henry.
Yep.
Yeah. My only concern is like his 40. He's slow.
Yeah.
I mean, dude's
he
slow.
has to run 40 yards. He has to run 5.
Right.
In the box. Stay in the box.
Right. Yeah. All right. I am back on the clock here with the Detroit Lions as well. Man, I could go a variety of things. I'm going to have to go offensive guard here. I'm going to take Tyler Booker out of Alabama. I think he's one of the best offensive linemen left available. Give me Booker here to kind of shore up that offensive line a little bit. And, I'll be the first. One of the biggest misses ever for our draft episodes is Jahmyr Gibbs. I didn't see it. I didn't think he was a very good pick for the Lions. I was completely wrong in that regard. I think a guy like Booker at the guard spot could really just take their running game to the next level.
They need to protect. You can definitely see opening of holes, protecting. They had some injuries last year along the line down the stretch that kind of hurt. Booker could be a plug and play. There are certain schools, I will tell you right now, centers from Ohio State are plug and play. Guards from Alabama are plug and play. Linebackers from Alabama or Georgia are plug and play. Corners from Ohio State usually are pretty solid. Definitely wide receivers from Ohio State. Like, there's certain schools where you know what you're going to get right off day one. And that's a fit right here for them.
All right, Fresh, you're on the clock with the Washington Commanders.
Well, as we saw last year, Jaden Daniels and those guys, they burst on the scene. Cliff Kingsbury, that offense, they found ways to get it done. They were shocking people left and right. Defensively, there was always some kind of questions. Are they going to be able to keep up? But with this draft, as much as I want to go defense, and I just have solidified my offensive line by going out and trade some players and bringing some guys in. I see Luther Burden III sitting there, putting him in the slot with Scary Terry McLaurin and Zach Ertz. Now you start adding those weapons out and really making this offense, which is already extremely explosive and took it to the NFC title game, even more lethal, and putting more players in the field that you have to defend on the opposition side. So Luther Burden III coming in there with the Commanders, and that Cliff Kingsbury offense with Jaden Daniels and all those guys, that's just going to be much more lethal in the future. So Luther Burden's my pick. I know he's a Missouri player, and I want to actually, if we could build in and replay that right after this and sort of edit it out, that'd be fantastic because he's a Missouri Tiger.
Yeah. I mean, sitting that late in the draft, man, he's worth a swing at. So, all right, Drew, the Buffalo Bills, you're on the clock, sir.
there's internal conversation about the potential for Shedeur to be the backup to Josh Allen. But with pushback from his dad, we're going to go ahead and go in a different direction here. I think that the Buffalo Bills are going to go ahead and draft Trey Amos. Ole Miss.
Interesting pick there.
Yeah, that's secondary. When they all got beat up versus Kansas City, whoever they put that third or fourth string kid in there, he got beat like a rented mule. He was pretty terrible. So they need some help right now.
Yeah, it's good size corner.
All right, I got to ask the question. What do you like him? What do you like about him over Benjamin Morrison?
He didn't go to Notre Dame.
Okay, fair enough. That's fair enough, man. That's a good point.
Well, actually, I would have asked him a serious question. Maxwell Harrison up and Amos actually have ranked a little higher because talking about speed. Harrison ran a 4.34. Amos ran a 4.3. And Benjamin's not that good being hurt. He could be up to help him be an impact craft. Are they able to be ready to go in September, or are they going to be more of a late October, November guy? Fully assumed play.
All right, Ryan, you are back on the clock with the Kansas City Chiefs.
Oh, goody, the Chiefs. The Shedeur and the Chiefs would really be a good fit. Not really in the athletic sense, but just in the overall vibe they give off. Everything about them matches. So I would probably take Shedeur just because of where he is on the draft board, having fallen this far. But practically speaking, so that's kind of a joke. I mean, I wouldn't actually take him. I agree with some of the previous comments as far as issues with him in general. So a real pick would go with Imanwari, safety. I think that they do need a lot of help on defense. I'm not a huge fan of the Chiefs, but that would probably be where they would actually need someone to step in. South Carolina, Imanwari.
I'm a huge fan of that kid.
Yeah, he's good.
He could even be with the size and speed.
Yeah.
Right.
You can put him a linebacker. He could just be on the field. You just put him on the field.
He's a playmaker.
He's fine as possible. That kid, the run, jump, hit, catch, you can do it all.
Yeah. All right, I have the last pick of the first round here. The Super Bowl champs, the Philadelphia Eagles. There's part of me that wants to pick Orson out of Texas A&M here because they can't have enough defensive line help. But I think that there's areas where I felt that they could definitely improve a little bit. And again, I think there's a guy that's a clear first-round talent, and it kind of kills me that we're going to end the draft on this. But I'm going to go the offensive side of the football, and the Philadelphia Eagles are going to take Colston Loveland out of the Wolverines. I know.
You are a smart and wise man.
Right.
Learned beyond your years.
I mean, again, as much as I couldn't stand the Wolverines
Michigan
on this,
sucks.
Right? But Loveland is a monster. He's a matchup monster there. Again, I think I value Warren a little bit higher of him due to the versatility that Warren brings. But Loveland he looks like an NFL receiving tight end.
He does.
And that's why I'm going with him.
I think a good reason on that is Dallas Goedert getting old, doing some contract stuff. Like you find the number two. One thing that worries me about Loveland, I think he's a great red zone guy and a great third down guy.
Right.
Does he have the speed to actually stretch the middle of the field? Probably not. But when you get in that third down box, if you will, he's a matchup nightmare.
Right. So, all right. Well, that's our full first round, but a couple of follow-up questions here. All right. The elephant in the room, gentlemen. We've done a full first round mock draft. Shedeur Sanders is not taken in the first round. All right. He's off. Where does the slide end in the second? Does it end in the second? And who do you think takes him in the second? We'll start with.
Giants.
All right, Fresh is going Giants there. Drew?
As the acting GM, the Cleveland Browns will be taking him with the 33rd pick to pair him with one Travis Hunter.
Ooh.
Who I selected with the
Right.
second pick for those keeping track. So for all those who said he wouldn't have his go-to guy on third down, guess what? Boom.
Well, bringing a point, if we already know the Eagles, if Shedeur's there, if the Eagles or the Chiefs are getting calls at 31 or 32, now, as you as the GM of the Browns, what would you give up to move up one or two spots to make sure you secured him? Would you trade into the first round and give up some more draft equity to move up and go grab him? Or would you wait till 33?
I would be open if they wanted to do like 4th round pick, let's say, 5th round pick, or a pick swap of some sort. But if it gets to 31 or 32, I would almost call the bluff. Like, you don't need a quarterback. Go for it.
What if the Saints or the Giants were like, hey, or someone put up, hey, they're on the phone and they made a great offer. Are you gonna now call their bluff and say, no, I'm good? Or are you gonna be like, yeah, here's the deal?
No, because like looking at it, let's say the Giants could be a different story, but I'll just speak to the Saints. They're picking at 40, so they're 7 picks back. So like what they're going to have to offer to get up to 31 or 32, I'm not going to try to match to move up one spot. The Giants, it could get interesting because you're basically, one pick apart. I would match anything the Giants were trying to do. Maybe even the Titans, if they didn't go. I know in this draft they went Cam Ward, but just saying if Shedeur fell to the second round and the Giants hadn't, or the Titans hadn't gone quarterback first overall, maybe they trade up. But I wouldn't want to get crazy. I thought about taking him as the Browns with the second pick, but I didn't think he was worth it. So the fact that he would be there at 33 and that I have Hunter, that's the only real reason. I wouldn't necessarily want to trade up just because, again, like, I don't think realistically that 3 years from now he's going to be there. Like, the Browns quarterback situation with the whole Watson contract and him, it's just such a weird scenario that it's almost like the first coach following the legend that's inevitably going to get fired. It's like they're just going to – I don't know why they got rid of Jameis. He was the perfect guy for the role, probably because he kept them in too many games that they didn't want to be in. So you just need a guy that's going to be plug and play until – and I know like – oh, you just re-signed Miles and all this. But, I mean, let's be real. The roster, you're going to have to churn it. You're going to have to get the Watson contract off the books, which feels like it's still multiple years away. So
I
wouldn't want to give up assets for Shedeur.
I saw they were going to be able to get out of it July 1 of 26.
Due to some insurance stuff.
Right.
Yeah, well, even still.
Do you think he's a good fit for the Browns? I don't see it.
Baker Mayfield. Has any quarterback other than Baker Mayfield actually been a true good fit for the Browns?
Well, that's fair, but I mean, I think he's particularly bad.
Well, all right, Flacco and Baker, like it just shows like you have to find a guy who wants to be there, who cares, and I think has respect for the team and is willing to do the dirty work. Like Baker and Flacco were. They did what they had to do, and I think they were just guys who were just trying to get it done. They didn't want the spotlight; they just wanted to compete and win. So it's kind of a bouncing on that with Browns quarterback situations. But we're all watching the draft, and at 31 or 30, the sign pops up and says there's a trade, and it involves the Browns. Are you going to run around the establishment we'll be watching the draft at and celebrating if Shedeur Sanders is that selection and the Browns to pick him? And if so, are you going to lose expensive sunglasses again?
No, and no. I learned my lesson very well one time for that one.
You're not going to relive the Manziel mistake?
No, that's why it's called the Manziel mistake.
Euphoria.
Ryan, where do you got Shedeur slide ending? Are you with them and saying Cleveland, or are you saying is there a different spot you see?
I mean, I think in the way our draft played out, there's a pretty compelling argument. I think Drew's got a good point with Hunter. That makes a lot of sense. But absent that, I just don't see how he's a good fit. I think Fresh's point as far as New York, Giants for sure, possibly the Jets, also tracks, makes a lot of sense. If I had to pick in this scenario, I say he would go with the Browns just because of the way it played out. But if not, I'd say it would go to the Giants.
All right. Fair enough.
So we had one quarterback go in our first round, over under 3 in the real NFL draft. Over under 2.5. I'm sorry. Let's make it more realistic.
I would say over, and the reason why you have the 50-year option. And people are going to trade up in those last few picks of, like, I'm going to trade up into 30, 28, 29, get an extra year to develop a Jackson Dart and Shedeur. And that's where, who's willing to make that move? Who's going to be the first one to blink you after a guy?
Over or under 3.5? You still say it would go over?
3.5 would be under. I think 3 is the max.
Yeah, that's what I had 3 in mind too.
3 is the number. It's already not a good class, and after Ward, Dart, and Sanders, it falls off.
Yeah.
Pretty quick. Jalen Milroe would be a late second-round pick because he's athletic ability. I think more of a third-rounder, but someone might take a stab at him. Now, if the Steelers and Jalen Milroe, I think that could be a Mike Tomlin mentor situation where that down the road could be productive.
So you made a good point there, Fresh, and something that I was interested in is there's a thought of what this draft class is like. What's one player that if this draft class fell this way, is there anyone that you would be willing, if you were a team behind the Browns, outside of, let's take Sanders off the board because of our discussion with him, but is there a different player outside of Sanders that you'd be willing to call the Browns up and try to get to 33 in order to make sure you got a player that was still on the board right now?
Defensively, there's 2 guys right now that if my defense needed help, depending on the situation, but Devin Ezeraku out of Boston College, I really, really like his explosiveness. I think actually the Packers might take it because they have a lot of coaches that coach him and recruit him at BC already on staff. And Maxwell Harrison out of Kentucky, you can't train speed, and the dude was already a lockdown quarter there at Kentucky in the SEC. The 2 of those guys, if I needed a player, they'd be the top of my list. If I needed a defensive tackle, Derek Harmon, that'd be the 3 guys right there I was trying to look at.
What about you, King? I'll go to you first here.
So I had Hairston for similar reasons as far as what Fresh was saying. He proved himself kind of time and time again, and he is lightning. If I had to pick one, that's the one that jumps out at me. That was still on the board kind of glowing, but nothing really else that I would really be jumping for.
What about you, Drew?
No, nothing I'd be trying to trade up to that spot for, because I feel like anything I'd want to trade up for, I could get 5 or 6 spots later, maybe even 8 to 10, depending.
What about you, Seth?
I'm a big fan of Morrison. I really do like him as a defensive back. The injury stuff is tough to get over, and you want to make sure he's fully healthy. I actually think that the 2 guys that makes the most sense for me would be the 2 Notre Dame guys out of the defensive backfield, is Watts or Morrison. I think that both of those guys have a level of talent, but again, they also played at Notre Dame, as Drew luckily pointed out. But they do run, Marcus Freeman does run a very complex defense that's a little bit different than what traditionally Notre Dame has seen. So I think that there's a lot of talent. Those would be probably like 1, 2, but I wouldn't be willing to give up a lot to move for those guys. So,
this is a very defensive heavy draft. Much better than the offensive side of the collectives. Like, there are some starters on offense, but you're not going to have the depth there. The defense, you're going to have the depth. And that's where, to your point, is it worth trading up for a defensive player when I'm going to get someone of a similar skill set that might trickle down and work myself way, unless it's an elite guy who you just can't miss and you need to plug in, your defense is that one guy away, you can probably allow some guys to throw and just grab the best of the bunch from there.
All right, gentlemen. Well, this has been fun. Again, something we do every single year. Love doing the full first round mock draft. So thank you so much for joining us today. And you've been listening to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. Hey, make sure you're checking out SpinnableSports.com. Yep, that's SpinnableSports.com, because the Irrational Confidence Podcast is part of SpinnableSports.com. Special thanks to our producer, Drew. He's here with us in person, usually behind the scenes, making sure everything's taken care of that way. Follow us on social media. Hey, if you haven't hit it already, hit that subscribe button. Fresh and I got some fun stuff planned for the month of May, and before you know it, we'll be back into college football season. Hey, engage with us, interact with us. We love talking to you guys. Let us know what your thoughts of our picks are as well. That's all I got, gentlemen. Fresh, turn it over back to
guys.
you.
Really enjoy both of you coming back in here and helping us out.
Right.
Love this draft time every single year. It's a lot of great intake and analysis and selections of athletes and great players who are going to be very successful. If you're looking out for player rankings, if you're looking out for top 50s and top 150s overall, check out SpinnableSports.com. I have every position group listed out for my opinions, as well as my top 50 offense and top 50 defense. Before we know it, draft day will be here. We'll be getting to celebrate, and we'll be on our TVs. And I feel like heaven. So with that, hit us up on socials. Talk to y'all later. Bye, y'all.